The senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to continue to talk about a subject that I raised yesterday on the floor, and that's in a larger sense.
The Senate's in a quorum call.
I'm sorry. I ask that the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to continue talking about a subject that I talked about yesterday. That's our situation in the Middle East, specifically, but not exclusively, with respect to Syria. To focus my thoughts, I want to begin talking about S1, which we are considering and will be considering shortly. We've been considering procedural matters. S1 is the Strengthening America's Security in the Middle East Act. Its sponsor is the senior senator from the President's state, Senator Rubio. He's done an extraordinary job with this bill. We both know Senator Rubio. He's whip smart, as I said yesterday. Speaking for me, he has forgotten more foreign policy than I will ever know. And it is a good bill. I wanted to just mention a couple of things, and Senator Risch has worked very hard on it as well, of course, the chairman of our Foreign Relations Committee. There's a lot to like in S1. I just made a list walking over here. S1 is going to reaffirm our commitment to protecting Israel. Israel is easily our most important ally in the Middle East. Easily our most important friend in the Middle East. On some days, I think easily our only friend in the world. And we should support our friends. Let me say that again. We have to support our friends. And Israel is a friend. And this bill will support Israel. And I like that. So I'm going to vote for the bill. Number two, Senator Rubio's bill strengthens our bond with Jordan, another key ally. But Jordan is a key ally in fighting terrorism and the humanitarian catastrophe caused by Assad's butchering of his own people in Syria, along with the help of Vladimir Putin in Russia. The third thing Senator Rubio's bill will do, it'll combat a radical economic welfare campaign against Israel. That's very important. You either support Israel or you don't, Mr. President. It's time for everybody to stand up and be counted. I do. And finally, Senator Rubio's bill creates new sanctions on the government of Syria. I'm not sure they're going to be enough, but it's a start. It targets those who have been laundering money to help the Assad regime. And I support all of these things. And I support S1 by Senator Rubio, and I thank him and Senator Risch and everybody who's worked so hard on S1. But there's a way to make S1 better, Mr. President. And I've got an amendment pending that'll do that. Now, I've heard some of my colleagues correctly say that S1 is about standing with our allies. And that's important. Certainly, America's foreign policy is centered in part around interests, but not exclusively around interests. Values are important too. If you have a foreign policy just based on your nation's interests, all you do is go from deal to deal to deal, and everything becomes expendable, depending on what day it is. America's foreign policy has never been based exclusively on interest. It's been based, I'm not saying interests aren't involved, but it's been based on values, Mr. President. And one of our values in America is that we stand with our allies. That's what S1 does. It stands with our friend Israel. It stands against our enemy, Assad. It stands with Jordan. But I'll tell you who it doesn't stand with, Mr. President. The Syrian Kurds. The Kurdish people are one of the largest, if not the largest, minority in the world that is stateless. There are Kurds in Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Syria. They don't have a caliphate. They don't have a country. Now, they're occupying northeast Syria right now. And I believe they want peace. And I believe, some of my colleagues disagree with me, but that they believe in democracy. And that they, in large part, embrace Western values. I know, and I understand that's debatable, but I'll tell you one thing's not debatable, Mr. President. We would not have defeated ISIS without the help of the Syrian Kurds, and that's just a natural fact. You can write that one down and take it home to mama. And before somebody starts saying, well, we haven't defeated ISIS, you never defeat the terrorist group. I mean, they'll just change their names. Is every jihadist in the world been eliminated in the Middle East? No, duh. We'll never eliminate all of them. But that doesn't mean the president is wrong to say, a couple of years ago when he became president, I don't know how many jihadists calling themselves members of ISIS there were, 100,000? They're sure not 100,000 a day. I know they had a capital in Raqqa. I know they had a caliphate in the Middle East. I know there were at least 100,000 of them. There are not 100,000 of them now. We wouldn't have beaten back ISIS without the help of the Syrian Kurds. Now, the president has announced he's going to pull American troops out of Syria. And he's talking about pulling American troops out of Afghanistan. And I know there's a lot of debate about that. And to be truthful, I don't know who's right and who's wrong. Senator McConnell has an amendment to S1 today. I'm not sure I'm going to vote for it. Not because I think he's wrong, but because I'm not sure he's right. I'm not sure who's right. The president says one thing, his intelligence community says another. Members of the Senate say a multitude of things, as we always do. We got to get this one right. And there's a lot of talk, not by senators, but I've seen the opinions in the press that this is all just a bunch of cynical politics. That the whole purpose of S1, I don't believe it, but I've seen people say it, and I guess I can see their point. S1's about making somebody take a tough vote. That's all it's about. Well, I don't care about tough votes or easy votes or the politics of this. I think what the American people are looking at is, we've been in Syria, we've been in Afghanistan and Iraq, but we're in Syria, we've spent trillions of dollars. Why were we there? Have we accomplished? If not accomplished why we were there, and if not, when are we going to accomplish it? And by the way, how much more will it cost? I think the president makes a very valid point about nation building and about mission creep. And I've listened to this debate, and I honestly don't know, and I don't think the American people know. And I know the intelligence community may be split, but we in the Senate, we all have, all of us, I've met every member of the Senate, we all have brains above a single cell organism. We can have someone come over here and brief us, experts, and tell us the pros and the cons, and we haven't done that. And that really bothers me. Now, I'm not here to criticize Turkey or President Erdogan. I'm not saying I agree with everything President Erdogan does or everything Turkey does, but Turkey's a NATO ally, and that means a lot to us. Turkey's supposed to be a friend. I wish we could have better relationships with Turkey. I'd like to have a trade deal with Turkey. But I also want to protect our friends, the Syrian Kurds. And it is no secret, it's no understatement to say, that President Erdogan and his administration in Turkey have had some pretty harsh things to say about the Syrian Kurds and about some of the things that Turkey might do if we pull out and the Syrian Kurds are left exposed. And I know that puts us in a very difficult situation. It puts the Senate in a very difficult situation, puts the President in a very difficult situation. Well, that's why we're here. And the purpose of this amendment, which I hope the Senate will support, I hope I'll be allowed to bring it up, it's not to make anybody take a tough vote or an easy vote. It's not about the 2020 elections. It's not about trying to get back at the House. It's about trying to allow us to focus and hopefully resolve a problem coming down the pike like thunder on a summer night that we're going to have to face. What are we going to do if we pull out or minimize our presence in Syria and our friends the Turks attack our friends the Syrian Kurds? What are we going to do? And I don't want to see us wait until it happens and have us all running around like a bunch of sprayed roaches trying to figure it out. We need to deal with it now. And we don't need to deal with it on the politics, and we don't need to deal with it in terms of who we're trying to take a tough vote. I'd like to see the Senate have a briefing. I'd like to bring experts over to talk to us, those who believe we ought to remain in Syria, those who believe we ought to leave. And while we're at it, let's do the same thing about Afghanistan. And then let's talk to the American people straight up. Here's what we've decided, and here's why. Here's the game plan, here's when it'll be completed, and here's what it's going to cost. I'm going to go back to where I started, Mr. President. I'm not naive, nor are you. A country's foreign policy always has involved with it interests, your own interests. But it's not interests alone. There has to be a moral component to a moral nation's foreign policy. And a moral principle is that we stand by our friends. I'm glad we're standing by Israel. I'm going to vote for the bill. Not sure I'm going to vote for the amendment this afternoon, but I'm going to vote for the bill. I just wish we'd stand by our friends, the Syrian Kurds. Thank you, Mr. President. I suggest the absence of a quorum.